Dr. Segura, welcome to the Business School of Ukrainian Catholic University.
Thank you very much. It's a pleasure for me to be here.
Thank you for joining us, and there are a few questions we would really appreciate your answers to. Your profound experience working with World Bank and your experience working in Ukraine made your personality and your skills and understanding of our situation very unique. Can you please comment on three questions that are next? What factors do you see as the key for the Ukrainian economy development in the nearest 5 years? Maybe?
Okay. Look, I think that Ukrainians have to understand that the past sources of growth are not going to be here in the future. In the past, Ukraine was very dependent on exports, and in the past, the Ukrainian economy was very dependent on domestic consumption, domestic demand. But these two factors are not going to be there in the future. Yeah? I think that exports may continue to grow, yeah? but as they were in the past, probably just a little bit in steel, but clearly they would have to be different models. And consumption, domestic consumption, was stimulated by foreign credits that are not going to be available. So what happened in the past is not going to be there in the future. In the future, the country will have to find new sources of growth. And clearly, the economy will have to diversify, they will have to produce new products, find new markets, enter into new areas, and this will require a lot of foreign investments. I think that the countries that have been successful in diversifying very quickly, having countries that have been able to attract a lot of foreign management, foreign capital, foreign technology in a very quick way. Korea did it in the 60s. China is doing it now. A lot of foreign capital help them to basically make this transformation. And Ukraine will not be able to attract foreign capital with the current business environment, with the current investment climate. It's just not a friendly environment. It's very difficult to do business here. As a matter of fact, most surveys, like for example the IFC ranking on how easy it is to do business in different countries, ranks Ukraine 143 out of 180. It's only at the level of, African countries, so it's very low. Clearly, Ukraine will have to improve that. And there are many ways how Ukraine could improve its business environment. I mentioned this morning some of the 4 priorities that I believe would be able to improve the business environment. One clearly would be public administration reform. I think that the government institutions per se today are some of the major bottlenecks for business development in the country. So too many interferences of the government on business activities, on pricing, on many business activities, and that is basically a major inhibitor. Also, decision making in the government is very cumbersome, is very complicated, overlapping functions, overlapping responsibilities in the central government, and all this will have to change. So clearly, de-Sovietizing public institutions should be a priority. Today the government works as it used to work in the Soviet Union, which was good for a command economy, but is totally inappropriate for a market-based economy. So major reform of the administration, that is a must. It's really the reform that will help other reforms. Then the government will have to deregulate. There are too many licenses, too many inspections, too many basically constraints to business activities. The government will have to implement a major program of business deregulation if it wants to attract foreign capital. Third, it will have to deal with the issue of corruption. And fourth, it will really should try to enter into a free trade agreement with the European Union, because that is the only way how it is going to diversify exports, by being easy access to European markets. Otherwise, it's going to continue to be an economy dependent on steel and metallurgical products.
Thank you very much. And you mentioned a big influence of international investments. Still, a lot of investors are perceiving Ukrainian economy as corrupted economy, and corruption takes a big question for any investment into the economy. How do you see what are the ways to eliminate corruption?
Yeah, actually there is a lot of international experience in terms of how to deal with corruption. And I think that most successful programs are based on 3 pillars. Yeah? The first pillar is prevention. Yeah? Just try to make corruption very difficult. Just try to make corruption not easy. Yeah? And try to make corruption very expensive to undertake. So you really use a market-oriented approach to corruption. You just make corruption more difficult to be undertaken. And this is what we call the pillar of corruption prevention. And what do? You just deregulate, eliminate the number of licenses, eliminate the number of opportunities that government officials will have to ask for bribes and so on, by making things more automatic. For example, countries like Chile, they have only one single duty. It used to be 10%. My understanding is that now it's about 6-7% for every product. There is no discretion. The government cannot say, okay, I'm going to charge you a little bit more, a little bit less, if you give me money under the table. For everybody, it's the same rate. So try to make basic things much more simple. Single rates and minimum license, minimum opportunities for government discretion in terms of how to deal with issues. That basically could be achieved with a good program of public administration reform, where you deregulate and make things easier. But to try to minimize the opportunities for discretion by government activities in terms of how to deal with individual companies. So that, I think, would be the first thing. The second is that there has to be a very strong enforcement agency. There has to be an enforcement agency with enough power to be able to look for corruptions in government organizations, kind of FBI, and with a strong power, a strong mandate, but working within this framework of a system where corruption has been prevented. And still, if there are some people that goes into corruption, that they are really refrained. That means, for example, that if some judges are basically corrupt, this agency should be able to intervene, very, very, very strongly. If basically the judiciary per se is not able to do that, which they should, but they are not. So clearly, a very strong anti-corruption agency is essential. But just an anti-corruption agency without prevention will not work. You gain nothing by just putting everybody in jails. I think that before you do that, you have to introduce a very strong anti-corruption prevention program. Now, the third pillar of an anti-corruption program is based on public awareness, dissemination. People should know what the rights are. There should be enough lines under which somebody can complain, by internet, by telephone, and so on and so on. But there has to be a very strong awareness campaign on TV, on radio, so that people will know, that what are the rights, and if they are basically affected, if they feel that they are having subject to corruption, there should be a good way for these people to go to the authorities and explain the situation. So corruption basically can be dealt with these 3 pillars: prevention, enforcement, and public awareness.
Thank you very much for that structural answer. And there is one more question left. You mentioned about the decentralization. There is an understanding of flat world organization in the business. If we can overlap this idea into the structure of the government of the country, can we build a flat country, let's say?
As a matter of fact, many countries have done that. Basically, a central government with too much authority and with a line action with lower levels of government, that kind of central government do not work very well. I think that we can look at examples of many countries, emerging countries or advanced economies. But for example, in terms of advanced economies, Canada is a good example. In the 1980s, Canada developed a very socialized economy with a lot of government interventions, a lot of government programs, government subsidies to industry, and a very strong central government. The result of it was that for many years, Canada accumulated very large fiscal deficits. And fiscal deficits were not sustainable. Then government tries to reduce the fiscal deficit, tries to reduce the size of the governments, and they were not very successful. But in 1995, finally they decided to carry what they call it major surgery. And what they took is they took this central animal, this central government, and literally cut it in pieces. A lot of the activities of the central government were transferred to the states, were transferred to local governments. A lot of the agencies were actually transferred to the private sector. They were privatized, outsourced, and so on. But a lot of them were transferred to lower levels of administration. And indeed, Canada was very successful in reorganizing itself. In 2 years, Canada was able to eliminate the fiscal deficit, and the reports after 2 years is that government services were better. And government services were better because normally government services are delivered more effectively at lower levels in the administration. These are the people that are closer to the users. The users can better control how money is used if the people that are using this money are very close. If they are in the capital, 2,000 kilometers away, they have no controls. But if they are there, very close to them, there are better ways to exercise control. And this proximity not only means that there are better controls, but also the authorities at that lower level have to be more responsive to the needs of the people. So the flatter the organization, the better the services, because there are more controls and there is more responsiveness of the authorities to the needs of the people. So the aim of Ukraine, indeed, should be to create a flat organization.
Thank you very much for your answers. Thank you for joining us.